Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I wish I'd seen the skies of Baal one last time.
And I'm Gary, and today we're going to review and discuss A Ghost Story, which released in 2017 from writer-director David Lowery. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, the story follows Casey Affleck's character, C, and his partner, played by Rooney Mara, who plays M. The two of them are living in a house together, and one day C is involved in a tragic car accident. He comes back as a ghost, wanders back to his house, and we watch him as time passes him by.
So I'd not really heard much about this director until, well, the Pete's Dragon remake came out in 2016. And Pete's Dragon, the original, is one of my childhood favourites, although doesn't really hold up to modern viewing. So it was understandable as to why it would be remade. However, I still had some kind of contempt for those that would even consider remaking such a childhood classic of mine. And so I was like, no, I'll stay away. But I didn't. But then, we'll see, A Ghost Story came out, and I saw the promotional work for it. It was getting huge word of mouth from Sundance Film Festival, where A24 Pictures picked it up before it even had its premiere. I'm like, okay, these are all good signs. And I watched the film when it came out, and then it kind of just disappeared into the ether, kind of like the film itself. And but I was impressed to find out that this film was a very low budget independent film that he had produced off the back of the funds he had earned making Pete's Dragon remake. And then I was like, well, this guy also then went to go on and direct the Peter and Wendy Peter Pan movie, which no one really liked either. I was like, is he doing it again? Is he just making another huge big budget movie to get paid so he can go and make what he wants? And I'm like, well, bravo. Like, keep doing that. Like, at least you get to explore your artistic sort of visions and write them and make them. And so obviously he's also worked with Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck back in 2013 on Ain't Them Bodies Saints, and would go on to continue to work with Casey Affleck after this as well. But honestly, Ian, I think it's a real treat that we actually get to sit down and talk about A Ghost Story.
Man, I've kind of always loved this movie, and funnily enough, this is the first time I've actually watched it.
So, Ian, how did you love a movie before you even seen it?
Because I wikied it when it first came out. I'd seen the poster, as you'd seen it as well, and I just thought, wow, that looks really intriguing. Just the picture of this ghost underneath a sheep, the dark eyes, a ghost story. I'm like, okay, you've got my attention. I kind of need to know what this is about. And so, as I do, I just wikied the story, and I was like, wow, that's really well written. That's really quite emotional. I really kind of need to see this movie to see if it's as good as I see it in my head.
Sure.
And then, time passes by, things happen, and I'm just like, well, I'll get around to it at some point, but I already know A Ghost Story is a good film. Nobody's telling me it's not. It's not like people are going, oh yeah, this movie's absolutely trash, it's a garbage fire, don't ever watch it. It makes me go, oh, I've got to watch it now.
Well, I don't know anyone in person that's actually ever seen or even heard of this film.
Exactly. So that was another thing where I kind of kept it close to my heart, where I was just like, okay, I know personally that I think this film is really, really good. Nobody is telling me any different. So when I do get a chance, I will sit down and I'll watch it all the way through. And for this review, I was just like, man, I was fucking right. Like I got so emotional while watching this. And funny enough, before I'd even seen this, a few years ago, I'd watched The Old Man with the Gun with Robert Redford, where he plays this kind of aged bank robber who's come out of jail, and he can't give up that life. And Robert Redford is absolutely amazing in it. The camera work was really amazing in it. So when I realized that this was the same guy who, done A Ghost Story, and I kind of like the Pete's Dragon remake. I love the original, but I watched the remake and I'm like, I can get behind it. And do you know why? Carl Urban's in it. Judge Dredd's in it. I can get behind that. And then I sat down to watch this movie, and oh my God, the music, the camera work, the acting, the emoting, the view. If if there was a checklist of things you tick when a movie is good, this movie ticks pretty much 90% of the boxes for me.
Well, I can tell you one box ticking that might put a lot of people off this film.
Right, yeah.
Is its aspect ratio. And it's filmed in 4:3. So it's boxed in and it's like an old television. A ratio.
Or like old school photographs.
Oh, exactly. With the fact that it's vignetted around the corner, so we've got these curved edges.
Yeah.
So it does have that sort of nostalgic old photo, old TV kind of look to it.
Yeah.
But that might put a lot of people off. They might be going, this is pretentious, artistic nonsense. I'm not interested. And they might be like, where's the rest of the picture?
I'll be honest. if you're doing that at the start of the movie, it's on you. That's not the movie's fault. That's you. You're pretentious and looking for some artsy-fartsy kind of ideology that you are not allowing the movie to show you.
I'm also saying these were all the questions that ran through my head at 100 miles an hour immediately. It's just like, blah, 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 like as you're trying to process and, get yourself onto the film's sort of wavelength.
Yeah.
And the film immediately goes, slow down.
Yeah,
like slow your breathing.
Yeah,
chill. Like we hear a bit of a conversation, some muted laughter as we fade up onto this couple on this sofa, and they're mid-conversation. They're mumbling.
Yeah.
I don't really know what they're saying, what they were talking about beforehand. That was kind of private to them, I suppose.
Yeah.
But then we just kind of linger here. So I'm like, okay, so the film is immediately just slowing everything down to a crawl from the get-go. And we spend the next 5 to 10 minutes with them on the sofa and then in the bedroom.
Yeah.
And then randomly watching M take out some rubbish and leave it outside, and there's a brief conversation about the removal company and removing a piano.
Yeah, I was a bit thrown off, and then it became one of my favourite sequences where M drags that unit out to the front of the house.
Yeah.
And you watch her drag this unit, and I'm thinking, where the fuck's the boyfriend? Like, that's way too heavy. She's going to pull something. She's going to hurt herself. And she drags it all the way to the front, and she drops it, and I was waiting for the cut. And it didn't come, and she turned around and she walked right back to the house. And I kept looking at the screen like, okay, something's got to happen. Why would you leave the camera lingering like this? And then I started to realize, because it will happen a number of times, that it's not supposed to happen. Not every movie needs big explosions and flashy special effects.
It's the mundane normalcy of it.
It's just normal. And I'm like, yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we have an extended 5-minute sequence of the two of them in bed. And you'd think a sequence like this is either going to lead to an inevitable sex sequence or something, but they just kind of embrace and touch and kiss and sleep. And
that was the point where they'd been woken up by the noise, hadn't they?
That's right, yeah.
And they've gone out and they've looked in the house for whatever the noise was.
Something must have fallen on the piano, but there's nothing there.
There's nothing there. And then they climb into bed, and once again, I'm thinking, all right, I'm waiting for the cut, or I'm waiting for something to happen.
A conventional film kind of edit, but
conventional,
no.
Yeah. And then it didn't, and I'm like, this isn't conventional. This is normalcy again. This is just two couple. This is a couple lying in bed. They're happy and they're comfortable. God knows what time it is. They're just waiting for the morning to come.
But that's something I also like about this aspect ratio, is that because it's kind of more intimate, the fact that it's cropped, the fact that it's also it's not mostly, but it's not wide shots or mid shots, but it's very close up as well. So you feel that intimacy, like there is these borders as the edge of the universe for them, that their center.
It's also like, because you're the audience, it's like you're watching them.
Yeah.
Like the aspect ratio, you're looking through like a little viewfinder of these people's life. And so part of me kind of felt like voyeuristic, like a little bit uncomfortable that I shouldn't be watching them for so long. I should try to look away and give them privacy.
It's because of the long shot, the long edit.
Yeah.
It gives you that feeling, which is good, because if it was fast, you'd just move on and you wouldn't digest any of what you've just seen.
Yes.
You need it there for a prolonged period to really resonate and think about it.
Yeah.
Because what follows the next day is, again, very minimal way of doing it, where the camera's on the house, and it just pans over to the right.
Yeah, that pan. I was looking at the house. I'm like, why are we staring at the house again? And then the camera panned, and you see the two cars have impacted, and I'm like, oh fuck, this is it. And obviously, I kind of know what's happening. But we see that Casey Affleck's character, C, has died at the wheel of the car. And then we're with M in the morgue. And the sheet gets pulled back and she sees him. And she doesn't really break down. She doesn't really cry. She's just processing. And I absolutely loved the way the movie kind of dealt with this situation where everybody is absolutely different when they would deal with grief or dealing with their emotions. And this is her way. And
it felt very internal. Like, I cried for her.
Yeah. I was like that. I was like...
Because I needed that sort of release because she wasn't giving it. But yeah, it's internalized in many different ways. And of course, she has to be alone with him for a moment. She puts the sheet across and she leaves. And again, the camera just stays there. We stay there. And I was like, you know what? It's kind of, again, a reminder of the normalcy of this. Like, after you do leave a loved one in the morgue and walk away,
you've got to carry on.
You've got to carry on, but they are still there. It's like, it just reminds you the existence of it still being there. I keep using the word normalcy, but it is.
It is.
And it might be mundane and it might be excruciatingly long edits, but the payoff is he sits up.
Oh, yeah. When he sat up, I absolutely loved that because initially it was just the sheet. But then when he sits up, you realize that the sheet now absolutely encompasses his whole form, you know. And that's what had caught my eye the first time I'd seen this movie, especially on the poster, was, oh, it's a ghost. How are they going to do this?
Yeah.
And then when they did it, I'm like, oh, wow, this is like, you know, like you can talk about supernatural movies, you know, like Ghost and things like that, Poltergeist, whatever. Everybody's vision of what happens in the afterlife is different, but at the same time, it's always kind of been the same throughout history. Even when you say to a little kid, can you draw a ghost? It's a sheet. Without them even thinking about it, 2 little black eyes and stuff like that.
It's the simplicity. It's almost like a worldly known sort of image of Halloween, of ghosts, of the afterlife,
And then watching the ghost walk through the corridors of the hospital while everything's just going on about him. You know, nobody can see him, nobody can hear him. He's not interacting. And then he cuts down a corridor and there's this big white doorway open and you're like, oh, that's the afterlife. You know, you can go there if you'd want to. You know, does it go to heaven, does it go to hell? We don't know. But he doesn't. The door closes and he turns and he carries on walking and it cuts that field shot.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
With the sunlight and the sheet and the way it drags behind them.
Because there's very little of the ghost actually in transit in the film. For the most part, he's just going to be standing still and moving.
Yeah.
So it's kind of awesome, really, at these beginning parts to watch him walk through the hospital, watch him walk through that field and eventually get to the house. It was great. Now, interestingly as well, they shot the film in 24 frames per second.
Oh, right.
Like a conventional film.
Yeah.
But all of the stuff with Casey, because it is Casey Affleck in the ghost thing for the entirety of the film.
Yeah.
Although there's maybe 1 or 2 where it's somebody else.
Yeah.
But that was all shot at 33 frames per second and then put into the film on top. So he's running at a faster frame rate than everybody else.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's not a lot of people can, you know, are perceptive to the different frame rates.
Yeah.
But it's just like this film is, its themes is time, and so the fact that the ghost is at a different time frame of speed compared to everybody else, and it's whether it's perceptible or not is also like time being perceptible, like time dragging, time going quickly. You don't always aware of it, but the fact that the filmmakers did that, I think is genius, whether you notice it or not. I think it's a really cool thing that they did.
I've got to give kudos to Casey Affleck. Now, I know to some people that might be a bit controversial because obviously he's noted of being a bit of an asshole on certain sets, which, in fairness, he has apologized for. Now he's a little bit older. And I've seen him in quite a few different things, like particularly in Interstellar. I thought he was great in Interstellar, being the older brother. I got to give them credit for doing this, for them saying, right, you know, you're you, but then for the rest of the movie, you're going to be covered in this sheet. And so we don't see you. You're not emoting. And they had to, I read in the notes that they had to kind of change the style of how he moved in certain ways.
Well, it was the fact that when they first just put a sheet over him and put high holes in it, they were like, that don't work.
Yeah, that don't work,
That looks like Casey Affleck in a bed sheet.
So they
put on these extra layers of clothing and helmet pieces to give this illusion and this bulk of this ghostly shape. So yes, we know there's a human soul in there, but it doesn't necessarily have the physical look of a human, but it looks like a, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I get it.
But I also like attention to the detail, and like obviously I don't want to jump to the end, but like when he first starts, he's in this pristine, clean white sheet. But by the end of the film, it's almost yellow and moldy and old and worn out. So there's like a wonderful transition. So the art department getting the shape and the flow and everything right, and also just for shooting it, and because it's kind of comical, it's you almost have like when you see the image, you're just like, it's a funny ghost, right? But that was what the director-writer also wanted to do, was to take something that everyone sees as kind of funny, humorous, light-hearted, Halloween kind of thing, and add some gravity to it. And I think this film does that 100%.
Oh, man, it's when you get those little musical moments that come along with it, like some of the music that goes with the ghost, because the ghost doesn't say anything, not making any noise, nothing. It can be quite haunting, quite scary, quite dark. But at the same time, it's not empty, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. It's like they could have just had no sound and he would have just been moving from here to there. But having that music there goes with his sequences so that when he finally does get home, and I'm going to do my best to not get fucking emotional now, okay? But when he's in the house with M, and, you know, Rooney Mara just plays it so well of this woman who's just lost like everything in her life, everything. We don't exactly know how long it is from the moment we see him get up from the morgue to, spoilers, the moment she leaves the house. I like to think that there's at least 6 to 8 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years where she is on her own, but she's not. The ghost is there and he can't do anything. He's just watching her. There's this moment where the woman who sold them the house, Linda, she comes into the house and she leaves this pie, and there's a note that the ghost sees, and it says like, if you need anything, please just call me, this pie is for you. And M comes home, and we don't know where she works or anything, but she's just going about her day, and she sees this pie, and there's something, she looks at something in the bin, like that was caught me off guard, where she kind of just opens the bin, puts something in there, and then she just looks in the bin. And I couldn't tell if it was the look of, I'm just ready to give up, or if there was, I didn't realise that was in there.
How long's that been there for?
How long has that been there for? But she goes and she just starts eating the pie. And now I said to Gary before we turned the camera on, I was like, man, it's like a 7-minute sequence. He's like, no, it's not. It's only 4 minutes. 4 minutes.
It feels like 14 minutes.
Because the camera just stays on her. She just keeps eating
There's 2 shots.
This pie.
There's the first shot before she sits down, and then it cuts to her side.
Yeah.
And then, she sits there for like 3.5 minutes continuously eating that pie. You kind of think like, oh, this is it. And then it keeps going. And then you're like, oh, she's definitely done eating. No, she's still eating. And then she starts chopping it up, and then she starts shoveling it in.
I got to give that actress credit. She knows her craft, because the director just went, I just need you to eat this pie. And she just fucking just kept eating.
Yeah, because it looks like she's about to have an emotional kind of moment, a breakdown or anything. But again, she just holds it all in.
Yeah.
And she's really strong. But yeah, she is buckling under the fact that she's kind of trying to fill this void that's now within her, and the pie is like this thing. Like maybe she's not looking after herself. Like there's a myriad of things because the film is not saying anything.
No, it's not.
The character is not saying anything.
You're just
not, dear diary, I'm sad today and ate a pie.
There was that.
Like it's a film that deals with grief, and it shows this example of it. And I felt like this film is drawing the audience to feel what she feels, but to bring your own baggage to this film.
Yeah, totally.
It's more. It's a piece of art. This film that's for you to reflect and think about and enjoy, or feel sad, or feel enlightened, or have a sense of solace towards the end. Like it's all about the audience. This film, yet alone what's actually happening to these 2 characters.
Yeah, I mean, there was that part where she's making the bed, she's stripping the bed sheet off and stuff, and then it just cuts, and she's just sat at the end of the bed. And it's almost like, why am I bothering? What is the point? And then there just seems to be a bit of a turning point where she actually does start to go out a bit more. She is starting to enjoy life.
We see the passage of time, because it's been very stilted and slow, like the long shots, and then it's still one long shot, but we watch her leave the bedroom, go out the front door like 4 times.
4 times.
Exactly, so that's showing the passing of time. Exactly. I like it because the camera's still slowly panning in as it's doing the multiple takes. So I was like, oh, that was seamless, and I like that. Yeah.
That was really, really good. And this whole time, like we said, we've just got this ghost in the house just watching. I mean, there was a phenomenal fucking moment. Sorry, I'm just going to be praising this movie all the way through. So if you don't like it, just leave now. But there's this phenomenal fucking moment where it looks out the window and in another house, there's another ghost.
Yes. Isn't that just like... for me, right... Like, because this film is like a reflection on life, you know, and how short life is, and it's the fact that no matter all the grief and pain and loss and everything you're going through, there's somebody else right next door going through the same thing.
Going through the same shit.
Like, we're not alone. We might be alone in dealing with it, but we're not.
And the thing was, when I'd wikied it, obviously I read that the ghost looks out the window, sees another ghost, and the ghost tells him that, you know, it's waiting for somebody. And
but he can't remember who?
Yeah. Oh, man, don't, man. And when I was watching the film, because I had never seen it, I'm like, all right, okay, how are they going to communicate? And then it comes up in subtitles. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, if ghosts can see subtitles because they don't talk, that's amazing.
They're just telepathic, right? It wasn't in the script. Like, there was no dialogue between them in the script, but it was when they were editing it, the director was just like, I want to convey the actual dialogue in some way, because it's I don't know, it'd be interesting to see what the film was like without the subtitle. Like again it would be more,
it would have just been two sheets looking at each other, bro. I mean, literally it's like one wave, and then if you don't read the subtitles, you're just like,
It's also how expressive those eye holes are.
Yeah.
It's the way that they're cut, kind of slanted, so whenever it looks down, it just looks sad.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
You just feel it, because you know that in a way C still loves M.
Yeah.
And M still loves C, but
she's moving on.
She's moving on. He's dead. There's
this
no
is where
interaction.
the ghost starts to show anger.
Yes.
Because there's a gentleman at the door with M, and they're getting romantically entangled.
Now,
and she invites him in.
Well, now, does she? Like, I thought that this was a really brilliant edit, because, you know, she's at the door, they're getting together, and yes, she should be trying to move on. She should try to be happy again. But then again, does she really want to try and forget her partner? Because, I mean, like, we don't actually see wedding rings, but I assume they've been together for long enough that they've actually settled down at C&M, have had this relationship, and now he's gone. So is she wanting to do it again? And so she stood there at the door with this guy. They're kind of kissing. It's getting a bit emotional. And then she goes into the bedroom, and the ghost follows her. And she comes back out again. And I'm thinking, oh, right, they're going to have sex. But it literally cuts to something else. We actually don't really see that guy ever again. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so you could assume that she had sex with him, but then maybe she didn't. We don't know.
I think she didn't, because there was a rage, you know, the lights flickered, and there was an explosion on the bookshelf. And so, like, obviously she felt his presence, maybe,
because she's reading passages from that book as well that are kind of catching her mind a little bit.
And then soon after, we can see the moving the lorry or the van outside, loading stuff in, and before long we see her packing her suitcase, and then before we know it, she's in the car driving away, and it's just like she's gone.
But there was a point at the beginning of the movie, which is really kind of an integral part of the story, where she was saying to C, while he was alive, that when she was younger, that she used to move a lot in houses, and she'd always write little notes and put them in the walls of the house. So if she ever came back to the house, she could find the note and she could read it. And so C was like, well, what did you write? What did you write? And she was like, I'm not telling you, I can't remember, blah, blah. Then when she's actually leaving this house, she writes a note and she slides it into the wall. And it just blew my mind, because we'd seen the ghost walk from the hospital to the house. But now he's in the house. That's it. He's unable to move. It doesn't really tell you. It's not like there's sandworms outside like Beetlejuice or anything. It's just he won't leave. And now there's this thing that he's desperate to read. And so he stays there and he just starts kind of lightly scratching at the wood. And while he's there doing that, we then see the door open and we see children come in and we see this new family come in and the whole house changes around and it becomes, nighttime for the kids are playing and then it's Christmas and then they're having lunch. And I thought it was just amazing just watching those transitions from left and right. Every time the ghost moved his head, there was something new going on. Time was just passing by. And then he just lashes out. He gets so angry.
Yeah, he gets some real poltergeist activities. He starts smashing the cutlery on the ground and banging the cupboards, throwing stuff against the walls.
Yeah.
The family are freaking out after they just saw this coffee floating before it's smashed.
There was a point where he was in the cupboard.
Yeah, I was going to say, there was a sequence where he was in the cupboard scaring the children.
Yeah, but he kind of opens the door handle, and I thought that was a great moment, particularly for myself, because I was like, if you're a ghost, you can literally just pass through doors and move through doors. But that's, like I said, like
in the beginning we see him transition from the hospital walking everywhere, but in the rest of the film he's just always there. We never see him walk into shot or into frame. He's just standing there. Yeah.
But then I was just like, well, why would he want to move the door handle? And then I'm like, well, actually, if you're a ghost and you're not interacting with anything, it can leave you quite empty, and maybe that is what makes them resentful and forget who they are and stuff like that. So they have to do like Patrick Swayze did and put enough energy into moving stuff so that they can still feel, even though they're not. Because there was that moment where he climbed into bed with M and he was like touching her, but could she feel him? I don't believe so, but could he feel her? I don't know. Mind blown, Yeah, and he scares the family away. And now the house is empty and he's left to his own devices to try and get this note out of the wall. And at first, I didn't like this sequence, but then it grew on me. And it's the house party sequence. And there are all these people, they've come into this house. There's rumors that it's haunted and stuff like that. So they're just there. And there's some people at this table and they're having this conversation. And this guy starts to kind of just explain existence to them.
Yeah, the prognosticator. And a lot of people really don't like this character because he has twice the amount of dialogue of anybody else in the film. He has more speaking lines than anybody.
Good.
And he also sits here and explains the entire kind of film's premise and literally talks about everything that's going to happen after this scene.
Yes, but
it's too on the nose, it's too obvious, and it takes away some of the mystique or the mystery or what your interpretation of the film is and kind of solidifies it too much.
See, I don't actually believe that. Because I've been at house parties and had a few drinks and whatnot and had long-winded conversations about existence and the universe exactly like this. So the only thing that doesn't seem kind of real to me is the fact that the guy is not slurring his words. He should be like 3 or 4 more beers in if he's going to. But I get it because you want him to be really articulate and deliver these lines really well. And I just thought it was, and maybe it's just me, but I just thought it was amazing because we don't know. I don't care who you are or what your dealings are in the universe. A, we don't know what happens after we die. B, we don't know how the universe will be in 3 billion years, if it will still be here. And this guy breaks that down for us. He's like, what's the point of having money? If the sun goes red dwarf at some point, and it's supposed to because science tells us this, the earth is fucked anyway. So everything that you're building up for is kind of meaningless. But it's not meaningless because it means something to you. And even on top of that, even if the fucking sun doesn't go red dwarf, the universe is expanding to a massive huge point anyway. It's just going to expand to a focal point and then implode on itself and cause a big bang and start things all over again. And I was like, man, that's amazing. The whole analogy about hearing music and then the apocalypse happening and all history being absolutely wiped out. And people aren't remembering anything, but there'll be that one person who just starts to hum a tune. And that makes you remember where that came from. And so that is existence. Yeah. And I was like, and the ghost was me. I was like, yeah, man, what the fuck?
Well, yeah, the ghost is stood there like, all right.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, it is everything that the prognosticator says does kind of echo in the following scenes.
Yeah.
Time passes really quickly now for the ghost, and we find that where his house was is now a giant sky rise. There's skyscrapers filling the everywhere.
Oh man, before you go too far, the part where the bulldozers came in, I was like, oh man, that's really fucking harsh. You can't be bulldozing this guy's house.
Because he was just about to get the paper out.
Just about to get the note out, and then he loses it, and he's just stood there on the plot. The whole house is smashed around him, and
the ghost next door is still there.
The ghost next door is still there, and the ghost literally says in subtitles, "I don't think they're coming back," and it just disappears. Like the sheet just drops, and I was like, okay, is that the ghost accepting now that they're not coming back? Or has something else taken his soul away because he has no more earthly attachments? I don't know, but that's what made it more beautiful, because like Gary said, all of a sudden the ghost is now in this building site, and this high rise is being built above him, and then all of a sudden he's in the offices, he's in the boardroom meetings, he's walking around, and I'm like, my mind's blown. Like, this ghost is stuck on this one spot, and things are just happening around him. And when he got up onto the roof and you're looking out at the skyline, I thought it was amazing, because the movie has started so small, 2 people on a sofa in a house, normal mundane life, and now all of a sudden we appear to be at least in the future. You know, I don't know when. I'm sure, I'm at least thinking that this must be set 2015, 2016, 2017 when the film was made. You're looking at least 5 years for that building to be made, maybe even a little bit longer.
Decades, I feel.
Exactly. You're thinking decades that they would have this business, and the city is being built around in all this field, and you're just like, oh my god, he's in the future. Like, where's this going? And the ghost just decides to just fall off the roof and fly all the way down. And I love that shot. That's the way the sheet was fluttering in the wind as it went absolutely down.
Yeah.
And then he wakes up in the field, and I'm like, and it turns out he's gone back in time. Now, I'm not even going to start trying to explain this, okay? Like,
if the prognosticator was anything to go by, then he's not gone back in time. He's actually even more in the future now, where maybe the apocalypse has happened, and only the 10% of people that he mentioned did survive and rebuilt civilization and humanity across the world all over again. And the fact that he talks about how somebody will remember the tune and hum it. The little girl is humming the tune that he was writing earlier.
Yes, and she puts a note underneath a stone as well.
And the prognosticator also talked about drilling holes in the dirt to put fencing in, which we see a pioneer doing.
Yeah.
So all the things that he mentioned we're now seeing here. So it's either he's traveled back in time because he needed to learn something, and I don't know, or he's gone so far into the future, apocalypses have happened, time's moved on, and it's cyclical. So here he is.
I like to think that he's gone back. I like to think that maybe he fell off the roof and time's passed, but the universe has ended, and he's ended up coming back to this point, and he's on the exact same spot that his house will be in the future. And he's seeing these, pioneers come along, and it's a really great kind of sequence where, like, they sit and they have food and they pray to God and stuff, and the ghost watches this little girl put a note underneath the stone, and he's looking at the stone, and now is he thinking that he wants to read the note or what's going on? But you hear Indians attack. You hear screams. You don't see it until the ghost looks up, and then the family are all dead. Mum, dad, the 3 little girls.
Yeah. But it's also, again, to show how quick time is passing, because we see her there, then she's rotten, then she's skeletal, then it's all overgrown.
Yeah. And then he's in the house again.
Yeah. And now he finally gets to get the note out.
Well, first off, he sees himself and walking to the house, moving in.
He haunts himself.
He does haunt himself. We see kind of build-ups to arguments that we hadn't seen at the beginning of the movie.
It gives a new layer to the relationship. Yeah.
M is kind of wanting to move away and do something else and move on, and C isn't, because he's happy where he is.
He loves the history and the memories he's made in this place.
There's an attachment to him in this house.
That's what trapped him there. Yeah.
And it's so mind-blowing because we don't see C die again, but we see the after effects that he's dead because there's a ghost in the window and there's our ghost looking at the window. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. And yet he makes his way over. And so obviously the future ghost that we see will go through the loop again. But the ghost that we're following, who's come from the past, now walks up to the note and he takes the note out of the crack, opens it up, reads it, and then the sheet drops.
Yeah, end film.
Man.
Yeah. He finally let go and moved on himself. Like, it's beautiful. And we also don't even need to know what was on the note. It was personal to them. It was their connection.
Yes.
So it didn't matter. Like, having us read the note won't mean anything to us. It means the world to him and them and their story. And so it's kind of a love story, but it's more than that.
I mean, I was messing around the idea of the different things that would be written on that note. So he opens it up and it's like, I love you. I will always love you. You know, I miss you. All these things. Or like, he opens it up and it's like, fuck you. You know, you still owe me $20. I loved as well that sequence where he played her the music, the music that he'd made.
Yeah.
And then it kept cutting to the future where she was listening to the music and then cutting back. You know, that song was just so well placed at that point in the movie. I was the man.
Yeah. Well, Iain, what were your other favourite scenes from A Ghost Story?
Oh, man. I just, like, fucking just... Like I said, I absolutely loved a lot of the lingering shots that they had, particularly that shot sequence of her dragging the wooden unit, wherever the fuck it was, out to the front and then walking all the way back. It's like we talk about it a lot of time where when the camera focuses with everything in shot, there's nothing else going on. You can't turn away. And so it was just like, here, stay, watch. Nothing's going to happen, but stuff will happen. And then it sets up, like I said, that panning shot looking at the cars crashing. Like, I really felt that. You know, there's no screams, there's no ambulance. There's like a little kid just stood next to the road, just looking at it.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know what has caused the accident.
We didn't need to see it. Just the aftermath is enough.
A drunk driver, whatever. We just know that C is dead. I absolutely loved that sequence where he sat up in the morgue. You know, I was waiting to see where the edit was, and I missed it. And I was like, man, that's fucking good. Good work, that is. That if I missed that transition of the sheet becoming the ghost sheet, then you really covered every corner. The friggin' pie sequence, like I said, people deal with grief in so many different ways, and that's what I got from this sequence. Like, maybe that's why it felt so long, was because I was just so heartbroken inside, and
that feeling lasts forever.
That feeling lasts forever, and she's just eating that pie, and I was just like, you go, girl, you fucking act your ass off. You know, all you are is eating a pie, but I'm getting so much that you are just so unhappy that the pie is not making you happy. The edit of M going out like 3 or 4 times. You watch her go out the door, and then all of a sudden she's coming out of the bedroom getting dressed up, and she's going out again, and she's doing that. Like, how long does it take? How many weeks? Is it the same course of days? I don't know. I just thought that was absolute great work. The ghost across the road in the other house, from the moment it's talking to him with subtitles to the moment it disappears, I was just like, man, like I kind of wish I'd seen more ghosts, but then I'm also really happy that the movie didn't make it like a whole motif that everybody becomes a sheet ghost and they go and do all that kind of stuff. I loved it when the ghost went mental and started breaking pictures and causing just, you know, things to fly around, because if you've looked into paranormal spiritual behavior, you know, that's what we've always kind of believed, that, you know, angry ghosts will use kind of their energy and their psyche or whatever to move stuff, to throw stuff around. I've personally never seen it, but I would fucking love to, because then I'd be like, that's evidence! It's moving across the room! I also really loved the long conversation with the guy at the party. I don't know, I can't speak for everybody else, but me, I got it. I totally got it. Gary will probably say to you, I go on sometimes about existence and paranormal, parallel dimensions and all this other stuff, because I have no answers. So I like to make up my own answers, because there are no concreted fundamental answers. So it's not like somebody can tell me I'm wrong of what happens in the afterlife or what's going to happen a couple of billion years down the line. I love the pioneers, particularly that Indian attack. Like I said, once, same thing with the car crash. We didn't need to see it, but we hear it, but we see the aftermath, and you feel bad because nobody comes and retrieves that body. That girl's body just lies there, it rots, and it's the fact that the ghost doesn't look away. We see the body, we cut to the ghost, we cut back, the body's changed, we cut back to the ghost, he hasn't moved. We cut back, the body is overgrown with grass. We cut back to the ghost, and then he's in the fucking house. It's like they've built the house around him and he's not even noticed.
Yeah. That's it. It's like, how much does he even remember at this point? He's existed for so long. Like the other ghost doesn't even remember who he's waiting for.
Yeah.
You know, that passage of time just erodes your memory of those things anyway. But
and
yeah.
My final favourite shot, sorry, is that skyline shot. You know,
it's beautiful, yeah.
The fact that we started off so small in the movie to this huge moment, and then watching the ghost fall down, the sheet flutter.
Yeah.
Fucking.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you cover that, man?
I think you covered the whole movie again, Ian.
Pretty much. I should have just said the whole movie.
Right. Yeah, I really liked the intimate scene with the two of them in bed together. Like, they barely had to say a word.
Yeah.
It was all just in their body language and their emotion. The intimacy was beautiful, and especially because it's the last night they have together. They don't know it, but like the horror that comes the day after, where we then like deal with for the next half an hour of the film with that grief of that loss.
Yeah.
It's so well done, from the crash reveal to the ghost sheet wake up to the pie eating to the passage of time to the ghost waving hi to the two ghosts standing there in their bulldozed houses. To the moment where that one moves on, all the way to the end where C also moves on. So yeah, the whole film. Again, yeah, it's incredible. So Ian, please tell us, how much do you recommend A Ghost Story?
I highly recommend A Ghost Story. I don't think there is, like, I love film, and there are many films that are in my top 10 list. This movie's at least in my top 5, simply because it's just beautiful. I could probably talk for hours with people about what they think is wrong with the movie and all that kind of stuff, and personally, I don't want to. If you're the one of these people who's looked at this film and gone, I've got no interest in that, then fine. That's fine. I'm not going to argue with it, but it also shows how emotionally unattached you are, that you are unwilling on finding out what it is. As Gary said, there are moments in this film that people would go, I'm not watching this, and switched off. Why? What's wrong with it? There's nothing actually bad happening. There's nothing horrible. It's just making you look inside yourself and question certain things that you may not have questioned before. And if that's the case, if you are afraid of the answers, like I said, that's a you thing. This movie's trying to help you do that. It helped me do that, and I hadn't even fucking watched it yet. And then I watched it and was like, oh my god, that's the most amazing movie. I think it's artistically beautiful. I think the music is sublime. I think the editing is just a fucking masterwork by a director who knows. And yes, he may have made some kids movies that adults may not think is very good, but I bet kids will get it. And he's made some adult movies that kids won't get, but adults totally should.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm also highly recommending A Ghost Story. This is a must-watch. It's one of the most profound and hauntingly beautiful films that explores love, time, legacy, self, nostalgia, and loss. And it's a film that leaves you feeling devastated before you do eventually find solace and a sense of peace, just like Casey Affleck's C character. The narrative is incredibly simple and the dialogue sparse, leaving a strong sense of the passing of time. It was a very deliberate and often excruciatingly slow pace that invites you to reflect and feel everything in those moments of grief or confusion. It sounds pretentious, but it's exquisitely well paced and edited and shot that it echoes real life moments that feel trapped in time. Real moments where time is both fleeting and eternal, It was just wow. Fantastic acting by Rooney Mara and some great movement and body acting by Casey Affleck, coupled with some very expressive eye holes. You really care and feel the pain and loss, especially backed with a wonderful and heartfelt score by David Hart. So yeah, it's a must watch. And watch this without distractions or breaks. Stay immersed and enjoy the peace and clarity come the end. It's all about time. Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.